Welcome to the Blue Shed podcast. I'm Atab,
And I'm Marissa.
and we're here at Gleneagle Secondary, joined by Mr. Jeremy Johnson, the coordinator of the Tri-Cities Homelessness and Housing Task Group. We're also joined by Olivia, Edward, and Matthew from the Blue Shed team.
One of the biggest challenges around homelessness is working towards lasting change to help all of those suffering move forwards long term. Here in the Tri-Cities Homelessness and Housing Task Group is a body of organizations and individuals who meet every 2 months to work towards tackling this standing issue. This leadership group says they envision a future where all Tri-City citizens are able to access safe, secure, and appropriate housing as well as the supports to retain it.
In this episode of the Blue Shed podcast, we'll explore how to enact lasting social change in our communities. We'll also explore the importance of lowering stigma around homelessness around this game of snakes and ladders. As we hear about Jeremy Johnson's story and his vision for future change for the Tri-Cities Homelessness and Housing Task Group, and how he plans to aid those in need. So, why don't we start by picking a piece for the game of snakes and ladders? So you can go first, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. How about the car? I'll take the car.
All right.
Looks like
Marissa, what did you like?
I like the Transformer.
All right. And I'll take Little Digger. Get rid of these ones. So, Mr. Johnson, you can roll first.
Thank you.
And why don't you introduce yourself as you roll?
Yes, I'm Jeremy Johnson. As you say, I'm the coordinator for the Tri-Cities Homelessness and Housing Task Group. I've been part of the task group for about 4 years. I recently became the coordinator in January. It's a role I take very seriously. I'm also responsible for the homelessness count here in the Tri-Cities that's happening in March. I've been organizing that, planning that. So yeah, that's very basically myself.
Thank you.
4. 4.
It's a ladder.
Yeah.
Ladder. So I got I'm on square 14.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you were just recently instated as the coordinator of the task group. So coming into this role, what do you hope to achieve as like a new leader for this program?
What I hope to achieve is I hope to move the conversation forward and also move some actions forward as well. Instead of having the same conversations over and over again, I hope to bring a sense of urgency to the task group. Not to say that a lot hasn't been done in the past. I'm not discounting that. I'm just saying that I'd like to move the conversation forward so we actually can perhaps get more done than has been done before. I'm not ignoring what's been done before, the good work that's been done, but I do want to move the conversation forward.
You can go. Was there any particular moment that made you decide to become the coordinator?
Um, when I was asked, I've known the previous coordinator since I've been on the task group. Her name is Polly. I've known her since I was on the task group, and I was actually interviewing her for a documentary that I was doing on the homelessness issue in the Tri-Cities. I was trying to raise awareness, similar to what you guys are doing. So I was interviewing her, and at that time in December, and she asked me if I would be interested if she put my name forward to the executive. So I said yes, absolutely. I was honored, and I was surprised and a little shocked. I'll be honest with you guys. I didn't expect. I don't have a background in social services. I don't have a social services degree. I'm merely a concerned citizen. So I was very honored by her her asking me, and then the executive interviewed me in early January, and a few days later they said I could have the role. So I was I came into it quite by accident on some level.
I think that really speaks to how all that really matters is that you care enough about these people who are in such a vulnerable position, and that really wanting to make change is all that really matters. So I I really what's the word? I really like appreciate your like genuineness for helping this cause.
Uh, Thank you. This cause is very close to me. As a young person in my early 20s, I experienced homelessness, so I know firsthand what it's like. I wasn't on the streets. I don't know if you have your Blue Shed project. I don't know if you guys have learned about Covenant House in Vancouver. I was at Covenant House for 2 years, basically, in the Rites of Passage program. So I have experience from that. It was 20 years ago, but it still sticks with me, and I was helped, so I want to help others experiencing it, and move to in ideally move to more prevention than dealing with it afterwards.
Our school has worked with Covenant House a lot of times in the past. Do you think it's one of your driving forces to helping other people?
Absolutely. The people at Covenant House are very special to me. The people the fellow youth at the time that I lived with, they're very special to me, and the staff was very special to me. They helped me in ways even now I find difficult to describe just how much it helped beyond the physical, beyond the roof over your head, beyond the food, that kind of transcends that. So yes, absolutely. To answer your question, it is definitely a driving force. I've looked at for ways, honestly, since then, of how I can help. That's why I got involved in the task group for about 4 years ago. It's simply it's a vehicle. It's a vehicle to to do that help.
There are a lot of like misconceptions surrounding like how people end up in like positions of homelessness, food insecurity, poverty. Maybe if you'd like to, maybe go into a little bit about your story about how you ended up with Covenant House and then into becoming the coordinator of the Tri-Cities Homelessness Housing Task Group.
It's certainly a long and winding road, as these things often are. Um, Unexpected. I grew up in Surrey, in Newton. Um, my father raised me. He was a single dad. My parents got divorced when I was 6 years old, and he raised me. Um, we actually moved to Prince Edward Island around the time I was 16, 17. I came back by myself. I didn't have a high school degree at the time. And so my options were limited. I lived with my mother, and it didn't work out. And so basically, she kicked me out. And then my aunt, who I lived with for a while, what precipitated directly the homelessness was my aunt in Burnaby near Metrotown. I was working a job at an IHOP, a dishwasher, and she got me a job at a second IHOP. And at that IHOP, some of the staff were abusive towards me. I was young. I was like 20 something, or 20, I guess 21, and it it was difficult. So I quit that job. Like the dealing with the abusive staff and so forth. So I quit it. I told my aunt, and she kicked me out. So then I went to the Metrotown Public Library, and I was looking for, like, well, a shelter. Like, I knew they existed. I just didn't know where or how that worked. I went up to the librarian at the reference desk, and I said I had the phone book open, and I said to him, I said, I know there's a shelter in Burnaby, I think, but I don't know where it is. Can you help me? Right? And he looked for a few minutes, and he said, actually, I don't see any shelters in Burnaby. And I'm like, oh, okay. He said, well, I see this Coven House in Vancouver that's mentioned in a few different places. He said, would you like me to give them a call for you? And I said, sure. Please call them. And so he called them right there. He spoke to them. He explained the reason he was calling, and then after a few minutes, he put me on the phone with one of the workers. I know her now still. Her name's Tracy. Um, and so yeah, I was and so they said they asked me if I could make it down there, right, from Metrotown. And I said, yeah, I had like a couple bus tickets or something. And so I went down there all the way to Granville Station, then walked to the shelter, which at that time was on Drake Street. Um, and yeah, and so I went to the shelter. It's a lot bigger now, but at the time it was a lot smaller. And I got a bed. And when you first come into the shelter, they give you, I think they still do, they gave you at that time, they gave you 72 hours to acclimatize, to get comfortable and to figure out how it all works. Those 72 hours, you don't have to go out during the day. You don't have to do any programming. You just have to sit there and decompress. And the first night, one of the other youth was honestly was threatening to me. So I was like, oh, what do I do? Do I stay here? Do I go somewhere else? I don't know. And um, I trusted the staff. I said, hey, this person kind of threatened me during the night in the bunk room, right? And they're like, oh, you stay here, right, Jeremy? And they talked amongst themselves, and then they came back and said, you don't have to worry. That person would be not allowed back in the shelter. So that told me very quickly that I could trust these people. That if I told them something, I could trust them, which that circumstances, I think I was 22. In that circumstances, it was very reassuring to know that, hey, I can actually trust these strangers, admittedly, and maybe they're not gonna like do anything bad to me, which is in that environment was very interesting. Um, and you have to do programming when you're at the shelter. You have to get like if you need ID, you have to go get ID. You work with a caseworker, and you make a plan together, right? And then you follow the plan. You check in every day in the evening, and they have certain things where you have to get up at like I think it's 7 a.m. at the time, right? And you have breakfast, then you have to go out for the day and work your program, right? And just it's very for me it was very logical. There was no like animus, there was no like threats, there was no none of that. And if you weren't able to work your plan on one particular thing, then they would adjust it, right? They'd find out what the barrier was, and then you'd work through it. So I was at the shelter for I think 3 months. It's been a long time. I think it was 3 months. And the big goal was to get into Rites of Passage, which is on Pender Street, West Pender, 326 West Pender. I still remember the address. And anytime I'm near there, I'm like it all comes flooding back. I was downtown last weekend. The Basically, if the goal was for me to get into rites of passage, and I was like, the way you had to do that was you had to get a job. So I did everything I could in the world to get any kind of job. I got a job in North Vancouver, dishwasher at an industrial bakery. Not a good job, really bad job, but it was a job. It was my key to getting into rites of passage, and so I was like, yes, and so I got into rites of passage. Um, really good people that I met there that I became very close with. I was there for the full 2 years. It's a 2 year program, and then uh, during that time, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the world. I learned how to manage living, right? Because you have basically a bachelor suite that's yours, that you control, right? They do they do weekly room inspections. Um, I think it's Tuesdays, where you have to have your room clean and all this. Fairly soon, my father came back into my life. He had come back from Prince Edward Island. He died in 2005, but for a while he was back in my life. So that was good. So he helped me get a computer. We went in half and half on this computer, custom computer, um, and I learned pretty quickly that if I played music while they were doing the room inspection, they were more focused on the music then they were focused on the tidiness of the room. It's something like it's like just a little. Don't ignore that in the corner there. Just forget that. Focus on this music that I'm playing that you like, which is the ways that you as a young person the ways you find skirt the rules or right um but I stayed there the full 2 years. I was involved with the youth group. It's called at the time it was called the Downtown Street Voice. And that was my first foray into like kind of activism, like youth engagement, and through that I got to do a lot of things. I got to go to conferences. I think I went to directly from that. I went to one conference in Toronto, and that led to me going to helping plan a conference about housing here in Vancouver, and then that led to me going to a second conference in Toronto. So I got to go to all these big fancy conferences, and I was like slightly overwhelmed, right? But also like, hey, I like this. I wanted this. People can do this for a job. I was like, really, right? Um, so I was involved that way. There's a long after I left Covenant House because you age out of the program, right? After I aged out, it was a bit of a dark time. Um, the You no longer have all the support. You no longer have this. I eventually got married and moved to the United States to an American woman. But I came back. It didn't work out. I came back at the end of 2019, right before the pandemic. Good timing for me. Good. But then, so now I'm stable. I was when I came back, I was working for Amazon in America. I was living just outside Washington, D.C. in Fairfax, Virginia, one of the richest counties in America. I learned. I was like, no, that's why I couldn't afford to live on my own there after the marriage fell through because really expensive, and the Amazon there was only giving you part-time work, right? So part-time at like $10 an hour or something, like maybe like, I think it was less than 30 hours a week, right? You can't live on that. Certainly not when health insurance is like $200 just for me a month. That's just the insurance, right? So I came back. I came back. I transferred back with Amazon. I stayed with my mother for a short time. Now I'm living here in the Tri Cities. Have been since I came, basically since very early 2020, like January or something or February 2020. I've been in the Tri Cities, and then I learned through Facebook. I learned about the Tri Cities housing, homelessness and housing task group. I learned about that through Facebook. I contacted them. I said, "Hey, listen, I like what you guys seem to be doing. Can I join?" Right? And they kind of like low key interviewed me, right? Just like, is this person like trying to scam us? They were concerned about that a little bit. I mean, I think they had some bad experiences with people contacting them. So anyway, so I contacted them. I talked to them, and I joined. Then I just went to the meetings. I slowly began going to the meetings. Usually I would just listen at the meeting because I'm like, these are the professionals. Like I want to um, I want to defer a little bit to them. This is what they do for a job, right? So, but over time, I became more vocal and speaking up when I felt there was something that I should say. Um, but yeah, and then I began like having trying like arranging meetings with politicians like Mike Farnworth, the Mayor West. That began making some connections, and I found that if you ask people nicely, just, via email, if you ask them nicely, then more often than not, they're willing to put you on their calendar, right? They usually don't say flat out no. They actually will, if you have a reason, they'll put you on their calendar, and then you can talk to them, right? And I may not be at the time, I may not be the most eloquent when talking to them, but keep trying, right? And keep speaking up. And my mantra is, this is not me speaking as coordinator, but this is just me. My mantra is prevention, right? Because prevention is so much better than dealing with the after the fact. Just recently, and I can share this with you guys, there's a program called the BC Rent Bank. You may have heard of it. A recent study just came out in December, January, about how the province spent about $6 million and saved for people and for the province, saved $27 million. So they prevented about 600 families from becoming homeless at the cost of about $5-6 million, and saved 27 million between the province saving money and people saving money. So $27 million saved at a cost of 6 million. To me, that makes very financially wise sense, very logical. This is the kind of thing I want to focus on while I'm on the task group, while I'm coordinator for however long I am. I want to focus on the prevention because one, it's better for the people, and two, it actually saves money. So I'm a coordinator now, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you. That's an amazing story. I think we both agree on that.
Thank you.
Do you have any like time specifically, like maybe at Covenant House or while you were coming back to Canada and becoming like part of this organization that you're in now? Are there any stories that really stuck with you that you sometimes think back to that almost act as like a driving force?
Um, uh, my fellow residents at Covenant House, who I'm still connected with, the driving force is I see where they've come. I've seen where they got to for having been at Covenant House, and I often wonder what would happen if they hadn't been, right? Because I feel like I was saved, right? In every sense of the word. And I feel they were saved too. And if you asked any of them, 95% of them would agree. Because when you have a choice, well, not a choice, but if you one of my friends, she's a friend, when she said she came to Vancouver from the interior by bus, by Greyhound at the time. There's no more Greyhound, but she came to Vancouver by Greyhound. She had about $100 in her pocket, no bank account here, right? She had $100 to her name, and she's like, "What'd I do?" Right? Like, and someone told her about Covenant House, the shelter, and so she went there and she got a bed, right? I don't want to imagine what would have happened if she hadn't, right? If there hadn't been a bed, or she hadn't heard about Covenant House. So she has a wife and a daughter today, a 7-year-old daughter today, and so that is one example of a story that her life is immensely better. One, she's frankly one she's alive, right? And two, she's married with a child, and she's very happy. Another friend who was my neighbor across the hall, in Covenant House, for confidentiality reasons, I can't share the name, but suffice to say, she became one of my best friends there. I was supposed to get that room, but she got that room, so I held that over her for a long time. That should have been my room. I was in there a lot because I was like, this was supposed to be my room, right? And she was joking with me, and silly story, because I helped her a lot with different things, and she was a fan of anime. She called me Tuxedo Mask for a long time. So, things like that, just like funny things like that. And a friend I made there, another friend, who initially lived downstairs, then he came up to the third floor. I was on the third floor. Yeah, he never had, after I knew him for a little bit, he told me he never had a really happy Canada Day, right? So on one particular Canada Day, I went and I found him, and I dragged him out to Burnaby Village. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Burnaby Village Museum, near Burnaby Lake, and Deer Lake. I dragged him out there, not completely unwilling, but I dragged him out there, and I told him, "You're gonna have a good day, right?" We got ice cream and some different things. At the time on Canada Day, they gave pieces of birthday cake because it's Canada's birthday. So they gave birthday cake, and I said, "You're gonna have some birthday cake, right?" And he's told me many times since then that was a really good day. I was like, "That's what I was aiming for," right? So things like that.
You talked about like how Covenant House was like such a big support to your journey, and like how valuable the connections you made there were, and like even if like when you like just came in you felt like threatened at a point, the Covenant House staff were there, and they were like people you could trust and feel safety with. uh how did you cope with like the aging out? You mentioned that was like a really dark point. Did you like keep some of those connections, or how did that?
I did keep some of those connections, but it's difficult to maintain those connections. After I moved out of the building, I was still involved with the youth group, the Downtown Street Voice, or DSV as we called it. I was still involved with that for a short period, a year or so. But then you age out of the program completely, and you are kind of left onto your own devices. Hopefully, by that point, you've acquired enough skills to make it in the world. Um, they don't mean to have it that way, but it can be disconcerting to go from having a lot of support to having very little. I did try to maintain those connections. Everyone did, but it's difficult. I got through it by remembering, trying, like, it after some time, going back and remembering those skills and trying to work those skills. I'm here, right? I didn't fall back into homelessness or anything like that. So in that way, it's a success. But it was um, but now I'm in a place where I have some more distance from it, right? More distance, and I can look at it more objectively. It's still if I let myself, it's still very very emotional, right? The whole the whole thing, really. Um, but it's a question of perspective, which is the only way to get perspective is either time or distance or something like that, right? To have a real sense of perspective. We had a reunion with many of the people from Covenant House a month or so ago. The first time many of us have seen each other in almost 20 years or so, right? In 18, 19, 20 years. But that reunion with the leader of the youth group, she was there. Her name, I can tell you her name. Her name's Eve. She's amazing, and we said we're okay. She said we're like, the next reunion is not going to be 20 years from now. It's not, because some of us won't be around in another 20 years, right? So we're like, we can't be 20 years. And there was a lot of hugs and tears and laughter. It was a few hours, right? And we had it in Burnaby. It was a few hours long, but um, in those few hours, you could say we like reconnected, right? Which was very important. Um, so yeah, so it was dark, but you get through the darkness, and you try and you go on with life.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That story sounds very inspiring. Like it sounds like you went through so much and you like they really helped you come out as like such an amazing person. Um
Thank you.
You mentioned earlier that in your role, you really want to strive to prevention. And I was just wondering like how would you envision yourself enforcing that in the like helping with that?
Well, the prevention is difficult to get funding for, right? It's easier to get funding for a shelter. The homelessness and housing task group has arranged with service providers that are members of the group, has arranged for like winter shelters to happen. In past years, emergency response shelters like cold wet weather shelters. It's the other way you call those. And then there's 3030 Gordon Avenue. So they've had some successes, and it's good that we've had those successes. This year there wasn't an emergency response or wet weather shelter, just the winter shelter, and um, and so the capacity was less this year, right? That's part of the reason why we have the encampment, and it's to go for prevention. It is more difficult, but we got to try to change the. It's a little cliche, but we got to kind of change the paradigm. Uh, I'm not blaming the cities. I'm not blaming the province. All I'm saying is let's sit down in a reasonable fashion and not blame each other. What I what I think would help is it's our meetings are 2 hours long. That's 2 hours every 2 months. We need to have longer meetings with more and more deep conversations. And if it was up to me, if I have any influence in it, I would want it to be at a round table, quite literally. King Arthur round table, right? It might sound a little cliche or a little cheesy or whatever, but at a round table, everyone is equal, right? You might come in my thinking. This is just my thinking. I not as the task group coordinator. Um, and that's a very important distinction. As the task group coordinator, I have very laid out things that I do, but I can still have an opinion, right? Rightly or wrongly, I could get in trouble for it, but um, I try to be reasonable in my discussions. I try to be rational. I don't want to point fingers at people. I don't want to blame anybody. Whatever's happened in the past, that's the past, right? We can't control what's happened in the past. It's gone, right? But we can't control what other people do, right? We can't control what another agency does or another level of government does, or in some cases, if you are within an organization, you can't control what that organization does because it's made up of a lot of people. But what you can control is you can control your own actions. You can control your own words and things like that. So if you come to a round table, everyone is equal. No one has an advantage. Um, so coming at it from that angle, prevention, while more difficult, will save lives, right? That's what I'm about. I'm about saving lives, because if we can talk all day long about who's funding what, but in the final analysis, I don't, where the funding comes from is matters less to me than what the funding is for. If the funding is for a shelter, that's a bandage, right? That's a band-aid. For if the funding is for a food program, food programs are great. We need food programs, right? If the funding is for something that can look at preventing people from becoming homeless, like the BC Rent Bank, expand things like that. One, they're cheaper in the long term, and you save people from becoming homeless. You save them the trauma, right, which you can't put a price on, right? You save them that trauma. You save their kids that trauma if they have kids. You save society from dealing with the consequences. So those are intangibles that you can't really put a price on, right? Or be very high. And for the tangible is if someone is staying in their home instead of ending up on the street, well, it's a lot easier to provide services for someone and cheaper for someone who's in their home, in their basement suite, in their apartment, whatever it might be. It's a lot easier to get services for that than it is to build a building, build a shelter, or build temporary housing or whatever. That takes a lot of effort because you have to find a location. You have to get funding to build the building. You have to get funding to staff the building, right? Doing all that, people say, well, we don't want another 3030 Gordon Avenue, right? Great. I don't either. I want people to stay in their homes. Living at a shelter is not fun, right? Living at a shelter is not a picnic, right? Low barrier, high barrier. Living at a shelter is not something that anyone wants. What people want is to stay in their homes. So that's that's where my thinking comes in. People could disagree, and that's fine. If people disagree enough and they want me out of the role, I did what I could.
Yeah, I know obviously it's not so simple to get the funding that you're talking about, but if you had the amount of funding that you would need to do something like this, how would you delegate, like, in a way that would make the prevention that you're talking about?
Well, BC Housing has a homelessness prevention program, for example. I discovered it 2 years ago, or more than a year ago. I discovered it on the BC Housing website. Right? It has very limited criteria on what you have to do to qualify to get this funding for homelessness prevention, and the most you get is $300. Now, if someone's facing eviction and they let's say they do qualify, the most you can get is $300. That's probably not going to prevent very many people if you're 2 months behind your rent, right? And your rent is $1,000, or 1 month behind, and your rent's $1,000. $300 is not going to do a whole lot for you, right? So increase the amount that's available for rent bank, homelessness prevention program, these kind of things, because they'll have outsized impacts, right? You'll get the people talk about return on investment, right? On investment, great. I would love return on investment. You get great money, great value for your money, right? 5, 6 times the value, as proven by that study that I mentioned, right? So if you want to talk numbers, we can talk numbers, right? It's not up to me. It's not up to the cities. It's mostly up to the province where the funding is allocated, and it's up to the housing minister, right? So I tried talking with the housing minister before the last election. It didn't happen. Election time, it's not good. So hopefully after the count is through, we'll have a chance to meet with the housing minister. I'll say, listen, here's a study that was commissioned about the rent bank. Look at the numbers. Tell me I'm wrong, right? If you can prove to me that I'm wrong, great. I'll back off, right? And as far as the homelessness prevention program, all these limited criteria, the world doesn't care if you're homeless. Like it doesn't care. Like it doesn't matter if you're like a senior or this or whatever the criteria might be. It doesn't matter to the world at large if you fit these boxes. My analogy that I like to use is healthcare. Cancer doesn't care, like the world doesn't care if like a cancer doesn't care if you're only in this age demographic, right? We have universal health care in this country, right? You can go to your doctor and the doctor's not going to say, "Oh, sorry, you're not at this specific point in your life. We can't treat you for this cancer. Sorry. Come back when you fit the box, right? Come back when you fit this criteria. Then we can treat you, right? And then we can treat you just a little bit, not a whole lot. So increase the amount of funding for the rent bank, a homelessness prevention program, because they will have outsized impacts. If I had a magic wand, that's what I would do. But the only thing I have my mind, and I have my passion, and I have my voice. If people want to listen to my voice, great. If they don't, okay. I can't make people do things. The only other thing I'll say is, if people don't like what I'm saying, or they think I'm speaking out of turn, what's your idea? Like, because what's working today, or sorry, what we're doing today is not working. Homelessness is increasing, not decreasing. Suffering is increasing, not decreasing. There's people that I wanted to mention to you guys. There's people today that are not homeless. Today, people that you probably know that today are not homeless. But in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, some of the people that you know will experience homelessness, guaranteed, right? Because the numbers are going up at an exponential rate, and over time, unless we do something different, it's going to, even more people are going to become homeless, not less. So I want those people in the future that I say will become homeless, I want to prevent them from becoming homeless.
There was a counselor, you probably know about this, who mentioned that homeless people are just people who don't want to work. And there was an interview actually when we were doing our research where you mentioned that you don't think they're fit for office.
Now, let me be clear. I'll answer your question. Let me be crystal clear. I'm speaking as Jeremy Johnson, the citizen, not the coordinator.
Yes.
Okay, so please include that.
Yes.
Most of what I've said is Jeremy Johnson, the person, citizen, not the coordinator. Just so that's clear for everybody, right? I am the coordinator, but most of what I said is me. Just wanted to get that on record. So yeah, I agree, or I agree with myself, I should say, that he's not fit for office, right? They're not fit for office. If you can't have compassion and understanding and humanity and humility for people that are at the bottom of the rung of society, right? They're homeless. They have nothing. They have nothing, right? They might have some meager possessions. I had some meager possessions when I had when I went to Covenant House. I think I had a couple bags with me, right? Like a duffel bag and a backpack or something. That's all I had to my name. I had some pictures that I'd love to show you guys from my childhood, to show that even though I became homeless later, I had a normal childhood, pretty normal, right? But yeah, it's if you can't have compassion for people that have nothing, I don't know what to say to that. Like you're supposed to represent everybody. When you're an elected official, you're supposed to represent everybody. And to me, and I've said this for a long time, but long before these comments came out, I said, to me, in my mind, a society can and should be measured by how it cares for the least fortunate among us. How we take care of each other, not how we take care of ourselves. It's important to take care of yourself, but how we take care of each other says more than how we take care of ourselves. Putting others first is not always easy, right? We have our own selves, we have our families, we have to take care of course. But I'm saying, as a society, how we treat those that have nothing, how we treat them, really says a lot. It says more about us than it does them, because when they have when they have nothing or exceedingly little, right? They are in a place of trauma, right? They're being traumatized on the daily. They wake up in a tent. They wake up in a shelter. I know from personal experience, waking up in a shelter is scary. It is incredibly scary. Thinking, my God, I don't have somewhere to go, right? That is incredibly, that's terrifying. I'll be honest with you guys. It is terrifying. I don't want to scare you guys, but it is terrifying. That experience, and then having that terrifying experience, and then shortly thereafter being helped by some stranger, the staff member, right? Being helped by them, that mitigates it, right? But it mitigates it. It doesn't negate it completely. So I think those comments are abhorrent, without measure. I mm, excuse me. I just think that if you say that in public, what are you saying in private? Right? What are you thinking? If you say that out loud, what are you thinking? I shudder to think of the possibilities.
And obviously, with people with these sort of views, or people in power with these sort of views, maybe it comes from a lack of understanding or a lack of wanting to understand. What do you think? What sort of change do we need to see in politicians or elected officials, or even just in society? Because these sort of views, they spread further than just like the people in power. Like, these people are being elected, and what sort of shift in almost the mentality do we need to see in order to bring change? Because as long as these things are still circulating, it's going to be difficult to bring some like meaningful change.
The start of the meaningful change is you guys. This is how you change the thinking, right? You change the thinking by winning hearts and minds, by using compassion, by using curiosity about the issues. You tell people in your generation, through things like this interview, through conversations that you have with people, you do not you do not win over the politicians by yelling at them, although it's tempting sometimes. And I had conversations with those two counselors on the phone conversations. They were unapologetic because they think they're untouchable, right? I'm sorry, they are elected officials. They are supposed to represent the views of the people, right? We put them in office. We can take them out of office just as easily, and I think they know it, right? You'll notice that they haven't made similar comments since then, right? They recognize the just the error that they've made. They recognize that. At least I hope so. But how do you change views? You change it. You change it with compassion. You change it with logic. You change it with understanding. You change it by talking with people. It's slow. It's tedious, but over time, over time, perspectives change. So ultimately, you change it through conversations, through education.
maybe one more thing before we switch out with some of our other members. As the coordinator of the Tri-Cities Homelessness and Housing Task Group, what is your plan to enact this sort of change and uh, with changing how society views homelessness and also with prevention? What's your plan?
As the coordinator, I do not dictate the plan. Uh, I coordinate the meetings. So speaking as the coordinator, get to the record. Speaking as the coordinator, my role is to help literally coordinate the meetings, where they happen, when they happen, do the agenda, do the minutes, very like run of the mill administrative things, right? Get if someone has a donation of some clothes, help get them to someone who needs who accepts donations of clothes. So literally, it's like the guy in the middle, right? Like moving things around. That's what the coordinator does, and of course, speak to people like you guys, right? Which is my honor, and help educate to some extent. But I don't set the agenda. That's for the task group at large. That's for the executive, right? To set the agenda. So strictly speaking, as the coordinator, um, it's limited in the sense of it's an administrative role, right? Um, Beyond outside of that strict role, I have opinions. We all have opinions. It's a free country. If people are not happy with me for speaking, okay, I fine. Tell me what I did wrong, right? If you come to me and if people get mad at me, the cities, the province, whoever, talk to me, right? I'm happy to have any conversation with anybody, right? I'm not looking to blame people. I'm not about that. I'm not about blaming people. I'm not about pointing fingers. I will point out the issues that I see in terms of we need to go to a prevention model. That's my opinion, right? I think we're entitled to opinions. Last time I checked, um, that's my opinion, but it's separate from the work. The work as coordinator is very run of the mill, right? It's not easy. I won't say it's easy, especially when I'm trying to do the count and the coordinator at the same time. But that's me. I have to deal with that. But it's like doing the role of the coordinator, which I'm still learning. I'm still learning what are the outer boundaries. What is acceptable. I don't honestly, I don't, no one's told me what I can and can't do. They just kind of like, you'll figure it out, right? It's like, oh, thanks. But so if I do something wrong, you can say, well, you shouldn't have done that. Well, I didn't know. Plausible deniability, I think. But like, so I'd rather ask forgiveness than ask permission, right? It's a lot easier to ask forgiveness. You guys probably have some experience with that, I'm guessing. But the I think if I speak out of turn or if I say something that someone doesn't like, I'll apologize. I have no problem apologizing. If someone says I did something wrong or said something wrong, tell me what it was I said wrong. I'll apologize publicly. I'll apologize without reservation, right? And I won't do it again, right? My pride does not factor into any of this. My passion factors into it in terms of I want to see change, right? I'm very dedicated to see change, but and there is pride in that. I will admit there is a bit of ego in that, but my ego is not so large that I won't apologize. If someone's offended, I don't want to offend people. I'll apologize to them personally, publicly, whatever. But the role of coordinator is has some boundaries in terms of like what I'm actually doing as the role, and I'm still learning those. But I want I only want to help, right? And if people don't like my style, I can't help that. But if someone's offended, I'll apologize.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it was very inspirational. I think our friends are gonna switch in for the second half of the podcast.
Sure.
We are back with Mr. Jeremy Johnson. My name is Edward.
And my name's Matthew.
And for this last little segment of this podcast, we would like to focus on the call to action element of the Tri-Cities Homelessness and Housing Task Force. And so to begin, we have Matthew with a question.
All right. So in the earlier segment, you talked a lot about how you have a focus on prevention, and perhaps that wasn't a big focus in the past. And I think going back to what you said about this trauma and pain people feel going through homelessness, it's something that you can't put a price on. And I think at the same time, it's something that people can't understand unless they've gone through that themselves. And so I think that's a really big aspect of why people tend to not have such a focus on prevention. It almost feels like we're investing money into something that isn't so serious now, and people only turn their attention to it once they start seeing people on the streets, and it feels like that problem is something that's growing and bigger. And so my question is, how have you tried to kind of share these stories with people that haven't gone through homelessness? Is that something that you value? And do you think only once people have kind of struggled and wrestled to try and understand what homeless people have gone through, do you think that's the stage where people can start trying to give genuine help? And kind of linking back to what you said earlier about when you first joined the task force, you said you had a tendency to like kind of listen in more than speak out. And I would ask, is that something you would like to see more of from people? Do you think people just diving in straight trying to solve the issue without hearing the stories of homeless people themselves, do you think that's something that can lead to more problems?
The for me, for me, as I say, I tend to, when I'm in a new environment, I tend to listen. I think listening skills are important. Not everyone has that approach, which is fair. There's kind of two different conversations that take place usually, or maybe three. There's a conversation with people that are directly helping people on the streets, and then there's like a higher level policy conversation, right? And if those conversations happen at the same time, that can cause conflict, that can cause frustration. So what I would like, is kind of separate those out, right? If possible. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if people will be for that. But give people more space to have more in-depth conversations about with using the knowledge that they have. So if they have more knowledge on the policy side, well, let's leverage that. Let's utilize that where we can. Myself, I don't have direct experience facilitating conversations like that, but I'll give it a try, right? I'm happy to I'm happy to chair meetings or facilitate conversations or whatever they want, however I can be the most help, however I can be the most give the most assistance. I want to, right? Whatever that looks like, whatever the we don't know we don't know the shape of the future, but we know it's coming, right? So I try to give everyone space to talk. I don't try to take all the oxygen out of the room. I simply want to be useful wherever I can be. whatever that looks like. Um, I hope that answers your question.
Um, for the everyday person that's not in policy making, or they're not involved in organizations that deal with homelessness, how would you say are some good ways for them to hear the stories of people that are currently homeless or have gone through homelessness to get like a better scope of understanding and try to empathize with them better?
I would say it's perfectly okay if you see someone who's homeless, and you're a member of the public, and you want to, you can talk to them. Like if you're, I'm speaking of adults, not speaking of youth, but like things like this, giving opportunities for people to speak. That is the way. That's the way you find out. That's the way you learn about these sort of things is um, by asking questions of people. Arranging interviews like this, as you guys have been doing. So I would say if anyone else is wanting to learn about that, then do similar things, right? If you're intellectually curious about something, satisfy the curiosity by asking questions. That's how you find out. Um, that's how, and for myself, I have the personal background, so I know firsthand what it feels like. But if I didn't and I wanted to help, I would start by talking with the agencies, right? If you're curious, the most agencies are willing to talk to you, right? Maybe not everyone, but they might have some questions about why you're asking or something. They might have policies in terms of confidentiality, but there are still things you can talk to them about. And to find out what's going on, there are a number of reports where you can read stories, you can read testimonials, you can read experiences of people who have been homeless. So there are ways to find out. It's maybe not the most obvious thing, but there are ways to find out. Just have to have some patience and some diligence.
Thank you for your answer.
Yeah, kind of relating to that, and this might be a little bit of a long-winded question, but just bear with me for a little bit. So going back to like the article we researched about like how you were about the counselor who said that homeless people are not who are just people who don't want to work, right? One of the phrases you said there was that statements like these can increase the likelihood that someone wouldn't seek services because they feel that they wouldn't be received well, and that it just sends a message that people who are vulnerable are not worth helping, right? And we feel that one of the most impactful things that we can do is to listen to these stories. And something you have done today when you were talking with Matab and Marissa was you shared these deeply humanizing stories of like just these interactions. Like that was a good day, what you said. Um, and so, and then further, you've also talked about how it's like the youth. By sharing these stories, right, we can achieve a greater impact. And so I was just wondering, from your perspective, what would you ask us who, like, we've already created something like this? How would you ask us to get the message out there? And how would you have us communicate these stories that we have almost like amassed together? What is like an effective way? Because we have been like doing a few podcasts recently, right? And a difficulty has been finding like platforms where we can share things like this. Um, I know like you're in a position where you're also kind of like fighting up, right? Almost. So is there like anything
You
you would
noticed
have
that,
us? Is there anything you would
huh?
tell us to do?
Uh, Tell you? No. Suggest? Absolutely. I wouldn't presume to tell you guys to do anything. You guys, for many reasons. One, I respect you guys. I respect all of you. And I respect what you're doing. I respect your humanity. I respect your humility. I just plain respect you guys. Um, what I would suggest is, I don't know what what the student body is here, the size of the student body, but you guys are you're connected to with that. So I would say the best way to get the message out is to talk with your fellow students, right? Let them know what you're doing. Share this with them. Talk to them about it, about your concerns about homelessness, about your questions about homelessness. See what they say. Have interactions at lunch and what before school, after school, in class, whatever. Just have get to a critical mass where it's talked about. Not every day, of course, but talk to them about it, right? Help them understand your perspective, right? See what their perspective is. The best way to solve homelessness is to talk about it more, not less, right? The best way to understand it more is to talk about it more, not less. It is not something shameful as some people might feel like it is. It's not something to look forward to, of course, but or to praise, of course not. No, it's a it's a social problem. You guys have social studies, right? It's a social problem. It's not a physics problem or something like that. It's a social problem, social issue. As a society, we have these things, we have these social problems, but they're problems of our own making. They're problems of our own creation. So the solutions have to be of our own as well, collectively, right? Um, we have the way to get what to do or how to improve the reality is is honestly to talk about it more and share your guys' perspective with your fellow students and your parents and your relatives, and just get the conversation going in a way that is reasonable, is shows compassion, and that's how we change things. We don't change things. Nothing gets changed, or very few things get changed from top down. Most things that lasting change is comes from the bottom up. That's how you guys are gonna grow up, or you guys are growing up, right? You guys are gonna be the ones. You and your generation are gonna be the ones that are in elective office, that are running these nonprofits, right? That are running businesses, that are living, right? And so you'll be the ones with the keys to the thing, right? So when you do eventually get into those roles, if you have a different perspective than what's there now, that's how the change happens.
I do like your comparison of like a physics problem to something like social studies, because that really does like bring like a jarring comparison to like a physics or math problem. You just write it and you're done with it, right? But social studies, that's long term. And I guess I was wondering if we start these like conversation starters, right? We put these podcasts out there. Um, is there like a tangible way that you feel that we could measure like the long-term impact? Or is it
The
just like something that we would have to like wait for?
the short answer is no. I say that because the um, this problem of homelessness did not arrive overnight. It did not arrive in the last 5 years, the last 10 years, the last 20 years. It's been with us for a long time on some level. Now it's more obvious. Now it's everywhere, all over BC, all over North America, rest of Canada, whatever. It's um, it's been festering for a long time, decades, not centuries, but decades, right? Last 50, let's call it the last 50 years, at some percentage, right? And it's only been on the uptick. we haven't, people have ignored it, pushed it to the margins, pushed it to the downtown east side, you know? The downtown east side, if you guys ever study history of Vancouver, Hastings and Main in Vancouver used to be a beautiful intersection, right? That was the heart of Vancouver, the Carnegie Library, right? That was the heart of Vancouver. That was a beautiful, beautiful businesses, beautiful streets. You know, look at old photographs, old video, old movies. You can see it. So it's been a slide down the generations from, let's say, the 60s through the 70s down to now. Um, there is a certain, I don't, this is not my expertise, but there is a certain percentage of people that need ongoing mental health care, right? There's a certain percentage. And when that certain percentage of people that, I'm not saying this is universal, but when that certain percentage of people who need ongoing mental health care do not receive the care, what happens? Well, they aren't able to maintain a job, right? What happens then? Well, they're not able to maintain a job. They can't maintain their apartment or their basement suite or pay their mortgage. Then they become homeless. Then they might, to cope, they might get into drugs, and then they could have some psychosis with the drugs. Maybe not, right? Or they start drinking more, right? Then they slide down even the ladder even more, like snakes and ladders. They slide down the snake all the way, right? All the way to Hastings and Maine, right? And as an example, so there is, if you maintain people in their homes, you provide sufficient education, you provide sufficient mental health care, then these costs up front save much more down the line, right? 20, 30 years ago, Riverview Hospital was closed, right? Basically, it was closed. So it had a dark history, but it also served a purpose, right? Providing mental health care for people in the whole province, right? Was it a good place? Not necessarily, but it did serve a purpose. It did help some people. Now I don't know what the state of it is currently, but I know it's not doing what it used to do, right? It's mostly closed. There's some things that happen there, but it's mostly closed. So people have to get mental health care in the community. Well, if you are relying on people to keep appointments who have mental health issues, you're relying on them to go to their appointments on time. That gets into difficulties because, well, maybe they don't have a bus pass that week, you know, or maybe they're having a really bad day and they can't get to their appointments, so they slide down further, right? I'm not saying everyone who's homeless has a mental health issue or is addicted to drugs. No, what I'm saying is they all function together. They all build upon each other in many cases. It's not universal, but what needs to be thought of is don't think of someone who's homeless as merely being homeless. They're homeless. They're also hungry, right? They're homeless. They're cold, right? If you treat just the homelessness, what about their food needs, right? What about their mental health needs? You know, they're treating them for any addictions they may have, right? So we're all whole people. This problem did not come out of nowhere, and neither were the solution.
Yeah, when you were like describing the trickle down effect, that kind of made me think of like a world where those things were like prevented initially, or there were enough support services in place. And like when me and Matthew were talking while listening to Matab and Marissa's conversation, Matthew brought up this idea of like a community web almost, and almost like the basis of that would be like an accepting community, a compassionate community that listens and is aware of the issue. And so I guess uh, second to last question, I think,
Yeah.
what would your like vision for the future be? What is like your idea of a community that can maybe not entirely prevent homelessness, because there's always gonna there are always going to be like circumstances we cannot predict everything, but if you could envision like a system, what would it like? What would your ideas be for that?
Kind of to build on Edward's question as well. Going back to what you're talking about, how at Covenant House you felt like you were in a safe environment, and at when you were waking up at shelters, it was a very scary experience. Um, and perhaps that safety net kind of feeling at Covenant House aids their success stories. Um, and what really hit me was the story of how uh, there was the person who was kind of threatening you while you were at Covenant House, and the people there helped fix that situation. And so, um, would you say that for us as a whole wider community to build this safety net that is reminiscent of the safety that you felt at Covenant House, is it the obligation of the people to uh, talk to these bad actors and like you called out the counselors, is it the obligation of the people, and what else can we do, as Edward asked, to build that safety environment for us, for people to speak out when they are going down those ladders or when they are in that state of homelessness?
I would say, again, this is me speaking as myself, not the coordinator, to be clear. Um, Sorry for having to say that all the time, but um, the ideally, I would say that everyone, first of all, gets a baseline of mental health check-ins, starting when you're in elementary school, right? Therapy if needed, and just everyone has access to free, regular mental health care, right? Starting at a baseline, maybe you don't have to get a whole lot, but at least get a baseline. So that way you can catch any issues that come along, right? As you age, as you become an adult, as you grow up, whatever term you want to use, then that is maintained, right? So that any issues that come up when you're 30, you can still talk to someone about, right? And then they can raise the alarm. Oh, this client of mine, he's losing his marriage is falling apart. He's not going to have anywhere to live. Okay, we raise the alarm. We raise the alarm about that. We make sure they have housing, right? Boom, right? You stop them from being homeless, and you cut the chain of anything that could follow through from that, right? So that's how you. I think that's how you bend the curve of homelessness increasing. You bend it the other way, is by starting with a baseline of mental health care, right? It will save so much money in the end. That will help people feel more safe, right? Increase the availability and the amounts that exist of um, of funding for if someone loses a job. Make it easier so if they lose a job, that they don't lose their housing, right? Have more funding available to support people in the transition from one job to the next, right? Um, have a proactive approach instead of a reactive approach. If you're proactive in dealing with issues, it's a lot easier to deal with them than reacting to issues, because you're playing catch up, right? So proactive versus reactive, have a baseline of mental health care. That will catch, I think. I'm not an expert in this. I'm just thinking about this logically, right? That should catch, I think, a majority, maybe not a significant majority, but a majority of issues. If someone's having a counseling session once a month or twice a month or even just once a month, every month throughout their whole life, then I think it's going to be pretty easy to catch things, right? Um, but yeah, and that, I mean, if they don't want to have it once a month, they can figure out a schedule. But that's good in many ways. Having a healthy, mental state, being able to talk to someone, just in general is healthy. But it's also helpful in terms of preventing potential housing issues. So That's what I would say.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. That was really insightful. So for our last question, this is something we like to ask all the people who have been on our podcast, and it is, what is a question that you have never been asked, but which you have always wanted to be asked?
Oh, question I've never been
And
asked.
to give you some time to think about it, we'll continue our board game maybe. Is it your move?
Well, it was Tab's move. So who wants to take over for him?
I'll take it.
Let me think. Let's see. He's this one.
Great.
Yeah, the crane.
Oh, does that
Oh.
go?
Yeah. My bad, snake. Go after.
Oh yeah, your turn. Yeah, your turn. Okay. Let's see here. Come on, 7.
Well, what does that mean?
I don't know.
We'll treat it as a double, so let's
Okay.
do 12.
12. Wow. Okay. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 26. What question I've never been asked, but always wanted to be asked. Just give me 1 second. I've been asked like how you became homeless, all these kinds of questions, but I've never been asked what would I have done differently in the circumstances I found myself. And in answer to that question, I really don't think there's anything I could have done differently. The way things played out, and the way they did, I don't think there was anything I could have done differently. I did at the time what I thought was best for myself. Um, am I was I am I perfect? Not even close. But I just think it's strange, and I don't mean to be presumptuous, but I kind of think it was meant to be on one level, right? Maybe not exactly that, but something, right? To not to shake me out of my complacency, no, but just like to give me some experience that I then could carry on and make some use of it. I'm always always been a little dramatic, so that's not unusual. But I just think that where I am now, if what happened to me hadn't happened to me, what would I be doing now? I honestly don't know. I'm in a good place now, assuming they want to keep me. Um, Especially after this interview airs, we'll have to wait and see. If not, I'll be looking for a job with you guys. But yeah, so um, I think I'm in a good place now, and if what happened to me hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't be the same person, and so yeah, I think it on one level was meant to be.
I guess to all of our young listeners out there, um, these experiences, those most trying experiences, are what make us who we are, and that is quite beautiful. Do you have any last thoughts?
No, I think that's about it for us.
Okay, thank you so much,
Right,
Mr.
thank you so
John.
much for your time.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, that's the end of this episode.